Welcome, Exorcist, to this brand new format. It's podcast number 3. Well, 2, including the intro. We're trying something different today. First of all, you'll notice that this is a video, and I have a guest 2 episodes in. So this is my Scream King, Ryan Toops, and he is here to add a little comic relief because I am not funny and because he's got a movie that he wanted to talk about, and I was like, cool, let's do it. So before we get too much into it, I did just want to say, on top of the reason I'm using this new format, this new technology that I'm recording on, hopefully the sound's coming through better, is I just want to thank Umba from Screen Divers podcast. Y'all go check out Screen Divers. It's an awesome movie podcast. A lot of my buddies go on that podcast and do episodes. But he's been mentoring me over this past week on how to make a better podcast. And hopefully, I am so sure that because of that, this is going to turn out much better. And so hopefully this will be coming to you not only through Spotify, but Amazon Music and Apple Music and maybe YouTube, which is why we're making a video version of this. So thank you so much, Oompa. And thank you so much. I was so surprised, honestly. The first episode, the intro, was only a week ago, not even a week ago. And so many of y'all have followed and listened and reached out to me and told me that you supported me and you got something out of the content. So honestly, I'm completely overwhelmed. And so without further ado, would you like to tell everybody a little bit more about yourself?
So hello, everybody. I am Ryan. My last name is Toops. As you can see on your Spotify, YouTube, whatever you're streaming this from, Jamie's last name is also Toops, which is kind of not completely accurate, but I just allowed her to borrow my last name as her husband.
I just borrowed for this podcast.
So Jamie and I, we've been married for about 8 years. We've been together for 12 and a half-ish, close to that number. One of the things that brought us together was our love of horror movies. I will say that we met online, and that was one of the key attraction items on the online dating app. So I swiped, which was when you keep. That's right.
Look, we were before the time.
Maybe we were before that. So maybe it was just a checkbox. I think she was just a checkbox.
I don't know. That was swiping came after us. We're old.
Yeah. So we've been on this horror movie journey together for about that entire span of 12 years. You know, we watched a lot of series together, a lot of movies together. We go to the movies together. And recently, Jamie just joined a Facebook group, Friends of Horror Weekly. And we've taken a dive even deeper into this horror genre. So when Jamie was asking around for guests on this podcast, I was the first one she roped in, obviously because we live together, you know, and I'm not going to say no to this. We both have a passion for horror. This particular movie, we're about to talk about, we actually just watched it again last night, so it's kind of fresh in our minds. This movie had a huge impact on me as a kid. This was a 1984 movie. I was born in 1980. Obviously, I didn't go see this movie when I was 4 years old in a theater, but at the time, I was kind of old enough to sneak behind my parents' back and maybe have a few sneak peeks of what's HBO playing, what's Showtime playing. I had an older brother. He's a year older than me. He used to love watching horror movies, and sometimes I'd sneak a peek in his room and just kind of see what he was watching. But at that age, as a young little boy, I was terrified of everything. I was not a very, I was kind of a sheltered kid, and I was not like, I was outgoing, but I wasn't like, I was fearful. I was definitely fearful of a lot of things. And I think it has a lot to do with, so I am Cajun. I am from Southeast Louisiana. I grew up in a small Southeast Louisiana town, and both of my sets of grandparents, they all had their stories and myths and tall tales to tell to their grandchildren and children to put them to bed. So the tales that I remember from when I was a kid, it was always about villains and monsters and creatures. And I'll give you 3 of the villains that my grandparents used to kind of talk about back then. One was the Rougarou. And if you don't know what the Rougarou is, then come to Louisiana We'll tell you all about it. And the other is the Bruley monster. My dad used to tell me stories about the Bruley monster who lived in Devil's Swamp. And the third is, we're going to have to edit this because I completely forgot. Oh, the third is the third is La Green. La Green. So those were just kind of three, almost like a Sasquatch type figure, and just kind of would live out in the woods and, probably take kids with them. So like, parents would be like, well, if you don't watch your back and you're, not paying attention, La Green will take you, or the Rougarou will take you. So I always had that fear in my mind about kind of something always there, something always watching over me.
So scary.
So anyway, the movie we're about to talk about, scarier than La Green, scarier than the Rougarou, scarier than any other Cajun myth character, the Bruley monster. This was basically, like I was telling Jamie, the bane of my childhood existence.
When you were a kid.
When I was a kid, yeah. And I felt that this particular movie was preventing me from enjoying horror. I couldn't get past this movie, and I couldn't get past the fright of this movie.
How old were you when you first saw this movie?
I would say, like, bits and pieces, I was 8.
Okay, so you were first introduced.
About 8. So
enough teasing now. What is this? Are you ready to tell them what this movie is?
So this movie is the original Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984 version. Yes. There were many nights where I couldn't go to bed, many nights where I would just think about it. And keep in mind, I had only seen bits and pieces, but just the character itself of Freddy, the scarring and the burnt face, the knives, the finger knives, the laugh, the voice, everything about Freddy made it really difficult for me to like get settled into bed and go to sleep. So I actually had a routine, and I didn't tell Jamie about this routine. This is kind of new to everybody except my parents and my brother. But I used to have a pound puppy back in those days. My pound puppy, his name was Duke, and I would sleep with him. I would prop him up on a pillow. My bed was adjacent to my younger brother's bed. We shared a bedroom. His bed was against one wall. My bed was against the other wall. My bed was actually up against a window too. So I would prop the pound puppy Duke up on a pillow that was providing a buffer between myself and the window. And I would fall asleep with that kind of on my back, turn to the side, facing the door. So I felt security and safety with the pound puppy by my side. And of course, still to this day, I think about, being introduced to Nightmare on Elm Street and just not being able to watch the full movie.
So thank you for that introduction, Ryan. So the sort of the theme that we thought about, Ryan told me about what movie he wanted to talk about, being a mental health horror podcast. Like, how can we frame this? And so I was like, okay, cool. Like overcoming childhood fears, like through horror, which is exactly where, we're going to talk about Ryan's journey. As you've heard, like, we both love horror. You know what I hear a lot in the horror community? That a lot of people come into the horror community because their partner or their spouse doesn't like horror. And so they seek out community elsewhere. So I think it's really an anomaly that we as a partnership love horror together. So I don't think that's common. I could be wrong. So yeah, overcoming childhood fears through horror. I gotta say, don't come at me, but I'm not sure if I've ever really watched that movie all the way through in one sitting. Yeah. But like, I rewatched this movie anticipating and talking about it, and Ryan did such a good job of like pointing out some reasons that what really terrified him as a kid. Like, man, it like really stands up into like 2025. So like, the opening scene of out the gate, the movie's like Freddy like fashioning his knives and like in this like blacksmith kind of shop with like the haze and like the imagery in the movie and like the atmosphere, the score, the special effects in this movie, like really stood the test of time. And so it was a little scary even today.
Yeah, definitely scary. Definitely the special effects were incredible in this movie. 1984. Robert Englund did an amazing job portraying Freddy, or just creating Freddy. And you'll notice if you watch Freddy 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, how many they are out there, that the character does change a little bit. He changes his voice, his demeanor, his acting's a little bit different. And in the first one, he's almost like a clown, like a little bit. His laugh is very silly, even though he's a very serious, murderous dream villain. His laugh is almost clown-like, and he doesn't talk all that much in the first movie, but with the lack of talking, he does make up for it with his presence, with his, I guess the effects kind of make up for it a lot too. Yeah, just a very, very uneasy movie to watch, especially when you're a kid.
So you told me last night that you couldn't even watch that movie. You were just afraid even watching the first few minutes of this movie. What was it about Freddy Krueger when you were a kid?
Well, good question. And I think that I am getting psychoanalyzed at the moment, just under the table. But I was basically afraid of the idea that Freddy was under my bed or he was in my closet. Like, I wasn't afraid of somebody actually coming. I wasn't afraid of a human being coming into my house and capturing me and, Amber alerting me across state lines. I wasn't afraid of somebody coming in to rob the few possessions that I did have as a kid. I wasn't afraid of somebody coming into my house and just doing terrible things to my family. Like, things that realistically could happen to you as a human being on this earth. I wasn't afraid of any of that. I was afraid. My imagination was so wild that I was afraid of Freddy more than anything.
So Freddy Krueger became the literal monster under the bed for you.
Yes, absolutely.
No, it was a defining journey for the next. You said starting at 8. Freddy Krueger becomes the monster under your bed.
Right.
This is your first connection to horror movies. It was a scary one. Yeah. I mean, you came to horror from a place of fear.
Yeah.
And what happened next?
So it was a slow clap for me into horror, because from the age of 8 till maybe I would say 12. So that 4 years I would just watch bits and pieces of the movie. And eventually I was able to, realize my imagination wasn't as wild. And I was growing up at the same time, realizing fantasy from nonfiction, and that, I'm in a safe place with my parents and my siblings. My older brother, he would always watch these movies. So I kind of got used to it. I guess that would be, in the psychoanalytical world, that would be conditioning. Ding, 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 ding.
Okay.
I was conditioned to just not, I was conditioned to just not be afraid anymore.
Yeah. Okay. Yes. This is what happens when you're married to a therapist. You get a lot of you get osmosis just living in the same household with me. He's been getting the mental health podcast for the last 5 years. You were learning that you were safe. You were learning that you were fine over time because nothing bad was happening. So yeah, that makes sense. I was thinking, yes, from a couple of different perspectives. Like you said, I am safe. You learned over that process that nothing bad is going to happen because you had a safe connection with your pound puppy. Mm-hmm. And so with your parents, that you felt protected, you felt safe. And so it is so important for children to have safe attachment figures. So those initial attachments for children at a young age, I mean, even up into adulthood, to have a safe attachment with objects, even like you talked about your pound puppy named Duke, which, by the way, his parents had a dog named Duke. Rest in peace, Duke, who passed away about
a few years ago.
About 10 years. Yeah. It's probably been about 10 years ago. Yeah, Duke was a good dog. I didn't know that connection. But yeah. So even objects can be positive attachment figures for kids to make you feel safe, which is exactly what you're describing. That's really important for kids to have teddy bears and even animals and objects, and to have safe people in their life to make them feel like they're safe and secure. I've always thought you've had a safe attachment with your parents, and you just confirmed that. And so you knew that you were going to be okay. And so that's from attachment theory, the importance of having safe attachments in your life. And then exposure therapy was another thing that I was thinking of. Right. So you talk about continuing to expose yourself slowly to the movie and just watching it over and over again until you just weren't as afraid anymore. So continuing to expose yourself to this trigger, to this terrifying thing, until it wasn't scary anymore. So the important thing about exposure therapy is it needs to be done in the context of safety. So experiencing that scary thing from a place of safety and security. And so you had all the right things in place to be able to overcome your fear. You had safe attachments, and you had some motivation to continue to address this fear. What was that? Why did you want to keep facing Freddy?
Shout out to mom and dad for safety attachments. And I wanted to keep facing Freddy because it was an interest. I just wanted to, like, telling myself that, I'm not going to be able to watch this movie because it's scary. And like in my head, telling myself I'm not going to be able to watch the rest of this movie because it's terrifying. I'm going to try to find a way to watch the rest of this movie, So it's just a battle within my own psyche to overcome that fear. Now, backflips is another story. I will never, ever overcome the fear of backflipping. Just not for me.
There's no desire in there. No one's telling you can't. What if I sit here and tell you can't backflip, Ryan?
Then I will tell you I don't have a knack for backflipping, nor will I ever. I don't have a desire to do it. That is terrifying. That will never happen. That ship has sailed.
So the important point is there was something about horror that was naturally appealing to you, that interested in you, that was like, I want to engage in this, but I have to overcome the fear first.
Yes.
Something that drew you in.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I know I certainly am going to have my own podcast about what drew me to horror in the first place. So it's like, I love this because this is interesting to hear about how you came to horror. I will give you a little bit of a sneak peek of what the podcast I'm going to do about myself and what drew me to horror. And it has something to do with, my family's going to know immediately what this is if they're listening. My mother and my cousins in a movie that she basically forced us all to watch from a very young age. And my cousin happened to gain the unfortunate nickname as a result of this movie.
I already know.
Which is another 80s classic, actually. And I'm going to try to get said cousin to come on and do this podcast. But anyway, so I digress. You know who I feel like did not have a safe attachment in A Nightmare on Elm Street?
Who didn't have a safe attachment in Nightmare on... I think all of the children?
So Nancy. Really, yeah, all the kids. So here's the thing that I dislike about horror movies that this movie did a lot of. But again, I respect A Nightmare on Elm Street. It is a classic. And I'm pretty sure when someone asked Jordan Peele what his favorite horror movie was of all time, he said A Nightmare on Elm Street, right? Like, so, I mean, I love this movie for what it is. It's great. I don't like horror movies when they spend half the movie, like, gaslighting the main characters and tell them, oh, you're just whatever, you're crazy, yada, yada. And then you have to spend half the movie trying to explain and, like, trying to make other people, like, believe you. I don't tend to like that. And so, but that does happen in this movie, right? Like, you've got the teenagers trying to, like, tell their parents what's going on. And, like, they're basically telling them you're crazy, like, blah, blah. And so... that is not a good sign of secure attachment. Now, don't get me wrong. You can have a secure attachment with your parents, with your friends, your partners, your pets, and you can have attachment wounds, certainly. So that doesn't mean like every time that you have some kind of rift or moment that suddenly you don't have a secure attachment. That's not what I'm implying. But for the sake of the context of what we're seeing in this movie, you have Nancy specifically like going to her parents, trying to tell them what's happening. And they're like, no, you're crazy. He's the one killing them. You're seeing things like this is not right. And she's just getting invalidated the entire time. And there's this one scene where she has set all the booby traps for Freddy. And she's like literally hollering at her dad, like from across the street. And her friend has just died. Yeah. I mean, my God, it doesn't matter if she's hollering. If she's hollering about, there's a nightmare demon over here. Like someone literally across the street just died and she's over there panicking. Like, yeah, if you're a parent, you respond. Like, it doesn't matter. And he's not. Like, he's just not responding. And that was a huge red flag for me. So I was like, okay, she's being, like, they're telling her she's crazy. They're not responding to her in a case of crisis. That's not a good sign for, like, a good positive attachment between Nancy and her parents. A good sign of positive attachment is when you tell somebody that, like, you're hurting and they respond to you in an affirming manner. And that's not happening in this movie, which is really depressing because obviously in the scope of this movie, we know that Nancy's not wrong, but there really is this nightmare demon who is out to destroy everybody. And one of my favorite moments of this movie is when, sorry y'all, I can't remember the name of the characters. Johnny Depp's character is he is his death sequence, and his mother walks in, and like he is exploding in like this blood tornado, like from the bed, like up into the ceiling, and it's like, huh. Wow. Maybe we should have believed the kids, you know? It was like, you want to believe people. You want to give people, in my opinion, this is my point of view as a therapist. You want to give people the benefit of the doubt first. But I don't know. We tend to, as a society, jump to like the worst case scenarios or to disbelief or doubt first. And I think that's quite a shame because I do believe that there is a seed of truth in everything. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I will say that one of Jamie's most unfavorable parts of this movie was when Nancy was booby trapping the house. I totally think that Home Alone ripped off their movie from, or at least a portion of their movie from Nightmare on Elm Street. Yes.
Yeah, that was my least favorite part. I was like, okay, suddenly Nancy is MacGyver. Like, she's like the teenage girl, and suddenly she rounds up all these bullets and wires and like anvils. Yeah. And I'm like, that whole 5-minute sequence took a weird turn. Yeah. And there was, again, another moments where like, another death sequence where Freddy has just gotten Nancy's mom, and like her corpse is sinking down into the bed, which is a fucking cool scene. Yeah. Nancy's dad finally shows up in the house, and Nancy turns to her dad and she says, "Now do you believe me?" Yeah, little too late, dude. Yeah. Another thing that I think was interesting about this movie as it relates to you, and I think I'm going to use this photograph as the art piece, as the cover for this podcast. So Ryan, well, let me back up for a second. So the premise of this movie is if you fall asleep, right, Freddy's going to get you. And there's moments in this movie where like Nancy especially, well, okay, let's just say Nancy. Nancy's really the only person who's trying not to fall asleep here. So she's depending on Johnny Depp, I forgot his name already.
Yeah, who fails like multiple times.
Exactly, to not fall asleep and like help save her. And I'm over here thinking, if I was dependent on this motherfucker to save my life, why not me?
I am your Johnny Depp. Your Johnny Depp.
I took it literally while we were watching this movie. About halfway through it, I took a picture of him asleep. So I think that's what I'm going to use for the cover of this podcast.
It was at least 3/4 of the way. But yes, I did fall asleep, as I do to most nighttime movies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Age.
Yeah. There's a member of our horror group who catches a lot of shit all the time for falling asleep during movies. Hi, Joe.
Oh, I can relate.
And I was like, yeah. He's not alone. He's not alone. So I just had to mention that. This is the first time he's heard about this.
It's a good one.
We like taking pictures of each other falling asleep at the most inopportune time.
Or snoring. Snoring and sleeping.
Also, we had a possum visitor in the middle of this movie last night.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. The possums we have in Louisiana are the only North American marsupial. And we have a lot that come to eat in our cat food in our backyard. And we like them a lot.
We also have raccoons, so...
Yes, indeed. I was asking Ryan this question last night, and I'm curious to maybe hear y'all's input and maybe talk this out with you. Is Freddy Krueger... Okay, now listen. Just forget that you knew that there's 20 other movies that was made after this, because I don't remember any of them. I'm sure I've seen them, or at least part of them. Like Ryan said, Freddy Krueger's personality changes after the second, Nightmare on Elm Street. He gets funnier. I don't remember anything after this first one, so I don't know. I have the benefit of not having that in my head right now. Is Freddy Krueger a defeatable villain? Because in this movie, there's no way to defeat him. Nancy basically does come up with this way to defeat him. Well, first she tries to drag him out of the dream to where they can defeat him in the real world. And that doesn't work because her dad's an asshole. And then she tries to say, hey, I'm not afraid of you. And then it seems like he disappears. But then at the end of the movie, you see that she's sort of trapped in this nightmare world with no way out. And so I asked Ryan, is Freddy defeatable?
So
within the context of this movie.
Just this movie?
Well, with what we know about Freddy.
Okay, I'm going to just disregard everything else I know about Freddy. And in the context of this movie, I'm going to go with, if you're like me and Joe, you're going to die first. So we will be the first two to go. Everybody else, you have to figure it out. So you're going to have to read. You're going to have to go into the library. You're going to have to go into the witchcraft stores. You're going to have to go visit the psychic down the street. Maybe go talk to a priest. I don't know. You have time because Joe and I, we are going to be dead first.
So it doesn't matter. Okay, I do remember in subsequent movies that people try to like use caffeine pills and like staying awake is not going to work because like the human body can't endure that.
Yeah, exactly. And my body knows that. Like my body is evidence of like, I can't. Have you ever seen me stay awake in 12 hours? Like in a 12-hour, maybe, okay, let's go 16. Have you ever seen me stay awake? Like,
Right.
I can't function without a somewhat, maybe 6 hours, 7 hours, 8 hours of sleep. You too, you're the same way.
Yeah.
Our dog, she can't function with like 18 hours of sleep or maybe 20. Yeah, either Freddy is going to actually murder you in your dreams or you're going to die from sleep deprivation. You're going to either go out in your car and then you'll have an accident, or you'll accidentally walk off the Empire State Building, or just something really bad's going to happen to you without sufficient sleep.
Look, sleep is healthcare, and healthcare is mental health care, and vice versa. So sleep is healthy. No one's bashing sleep here. We should all get our sleep. Maybe this is a PSA. Is that this is why Freddy is probably the scariest horror villain, is because sleep is so healthy and so scary. So everyone, take this as a sign to go
get your rest.
Get your rest.
Get your proper rest.
Get your sleep.
Get your Apple, your Fitwatch. Track your sleep. Make sure you're getting those hours. Deep sleep is important. Yeah, just get your rest. And then if Freddy ever comes across your dreams, and be prepared to stay up for about 11 days.
Yeah. So I was really optimistic because this moment, I thought that Nancy was going to win, actually, because whenever Nancy did decide, hey, you know what, I'm afraid of you. I'm not afraid of you. And, I take my power back from you. I was really optimistic in that moment because I did explain a little bit in my first podcast that a lot of my foundational philosophy as a therapist comes from internal family systems. And from that philosophy is you work with the fear parts. Like, again, that's parts work. So part of me feels like this, part of me feels like that. So part of me right now is really nervous doing this podcast. And part of me is really excited because I'm doing it with my husband. So multiple things can be true at once kind of thing. And so from when I think about, this movie and how that translates into the real world, from that philosophy, from what I've learned, if someone has a fear of something, my job as a therapist is to work with that part of them holding the fear first. And so if you can work with that part holding the fear to release that fear, to understand why you're afraid in the first place, where was that fear born? What's going to happen if this plays out, right? Like little Ryan, if you go to bed, this thing underneath the bed's going to get you. And then the natural conclusion of that is you're going to die. I'm assuming.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just first of all, validating, hearing, understanding what that fear is. And then letting it take its course and understanding, hey, what do you need to feel safe? What do you need to feel secure? What do you need to let go of that fear? And sometimes it's quicker. Sometimes that's quicker than the other. Sometimes it takes 4 years of exposure therapy and safety. Sometimes it can be like, hey, all I need to do is being hurt. All I need to do is say that out loud. And now I feel better. We can move on. Cool. But I think having that patience is important. Understanding that fear, letting it be heard. Those are the important first steps. And then after the fear has been worked on, again, step number 1, then you can move on to the next problem. Now the fear's been addressed. How can I work with the part that needs to do X, Y, and Z? How do I save my dad? How do I reconnect with my friends, in the context of the movie? But I do think that's why I had a lot of hope for the movie, because I saw Nancy going to that fear and taking the power away from that fear, but it didn't work out in this movie. So, yeah. But good thing movies aren't real life, and that's the nice thing about horror, is because we can experience them in the context of cinema, and they can stay there safely in the screen. It's not like the real world. Did that make sense, Ryan?
Complete sense. Yes. I will say that after watching this movie,
I'm glad you can check me right here, because sometimes I feel like I psychobabble and like I don't know if people are that's gonna make sense.
So yeah, I guess after watching this movie, this was the first horror movie that I was able to watch from start to finish. And I figured that even as a young kid, I was between the ages of 8 and 12 trying to complete this entire movie. I wasn't watching other horror movies in between, because I knew Freddy was that was the biggest fear in my life. And it was nobody else. It was no other figure in my mind, my childhood brain, that was greater than the fear that I felt for Freddy. So after watching Freddy, after finally finishing the entire movie from start to finish, then I just took off watching this horror movie after that horror movie after this, because I felt like if I could conquer Freddy, I could conquer anything. I could watch anything. Then Jason, then Michael Myers, then Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Hang on just a second. That's a big deal. All coming from a horror movie.
Yeah, all coming from a horror movie with a child imagination. Well, yeah, thinking about it at this type of, I guess, advancement as a kid, like I literally was thinking about, okay, if I can do this, I can watch these movies and these movies and these movies. Now, I'm also saying, I'm not trying to say that if I could watch Freddy, I can do a backflip. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying the fear that there was no greater fear than what Freddy brought to me as a child. So if I can overcome that type of fear, then I could overcome anything within the horror genre.
Yes, horror is empowering.
Yeah.
Yes, cool.
So any other points we needed to touch on? I feel very fulfilled in doing this episode with you.
Yeah. I'm very, very proud of you.
Thank you for having me as a guest.
I think that the audience is probably not going to want to ever hear from me again.
No, you are why we are listening. I enjoy listening to it. I'm sure everybody else does. Takes a different approach on how you can connect horror movies and mental health. It's a great combination. Mental health is something that we don't talk about a lot, especially here in the South. And it's not something that is put above much else. If you ever live here, you know, there's not that many resources for people out there to seek mental health assistance. So I think this is great. This is a great opportunity for you to, you know, get out there, show your voice, and talk about what you've learned and what you're learning.
I'm editing all of that out.
Yeah.
Maybe I am. So, since this is The Exorcist Within, and the theme is we all have the capacity to heal within ourselves and with others, what demons have you exorcised through A Nightmare on Elm Street?
So if you watch Friday the 13th, and even Freddy versus Jason, there's a scene where Jason is a child, a little bitty boy, and he is curled up in a ball, and there's water falling on him because his greatest fear is water, right? That's Jason's greatest fear. So
even Jason was a child.
Even Jason had a fear as a child. His fear was water. So yeah,
makes that series even more fucked up.
Right, it does. And the demon that was exercised in me was just that fear of somebody, something just watching me. It was almost like that paranoia as a kid that, you know, most kids have it. There's a monster under my bed. There's a monster under my bed. Well, my monster under my bed was actually in a movie that you could see on TV. Cool. You know, he was there, and I can watch him. I can watch him murder people, which is even scarier. So my monster was my monster was a cinematic legend.
You got a cool monster.
Yeah.
That's cool.
I want my monster's autograph.
You can probably get it. I think I think Robert is still out there giving autographs.
Yeah.
That's called externalization. And so whenever we can externalize our fears, it makes it feel further away from us and not so scary. So yeah, you put your demon from the inside onto a screen. That makes sense.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. So yeah, we're able to overcome childhood fears through horror. How about that? Through externalization, through exposure therapy, through having secure attachment with others and feeling safe and present right here in the real world. And we can validate those fears, understand where those fears come from, hold space for those fears, and help them to move along when they're ready, whether that's a moment or years, and seek empowerment through overcoming those fears. And horror can help with all of that. Who knew? Who would have thunk it?
Who would have thunk it? Yeah. Horror, yes, I give much respect, pay lots of homage to the founders of the genre, and it's more of like a niche kind of community, but yeah, thank you all to the people who actually put in the work to make these movies.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. All right. I did want to maybe give a little sneak peek of the movie that I plan to talk about next week. And just I know I didn't do that before, but I think it's going to be a solo adventure next week. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe if everyone comes back and like, we need Ryan back. But next week I'm going to be talking about long legs, and yes, there's a very specific reason. I am going to be talking about long legs through the lens of neurodivergence, and that will make a whole lot more sense next week, obviously. Until then, I need to have a catchphrase.
This is the exorcist within, like.
Well, yeah, we're exercising our own demons.
The power of no, that's not.
The power of self compels you.
Yeah, that would be better. That would be better.
IFS folks would love that. Because self is the healing tool. The power of self compels you. Okay, bye.